a glamour from unreached transcendences, iridescent with the glory of the unseen, a message from the unknown immortal light, ablaze upon creation's quivering edge. Dawn built her aura of magnificent hues and buried its seed of grandeur in the hours. This glamour from unreached transcendences that is iridescent, lustrous with colors that are like the rainbow, iridescent with the glory of the unseen. And then this message comes from the immortal light that is unknown. And yet it's ablaze upon creation's quivering edge, where dawn builds her aura of magnificent hues and buries its seed of grandeur in the hours. This has to be Vedic.
Mm.
When dawn, Usha, comes and buries its seed of grandeur in the hours, there's no greater promise to us than those lines, that the light comes, it will always be with us, and dawn, with her aura of these magnificent hues, buries its seed of grandeur in the hours. Of course, many things happen after that. We know that Earth rejects it for a while, and we will get into that eventually. But it is buried in the hours. Vladimir, any comments?
Well, yes, that's quite explicit already here. That
Yes. Well, let's carry on then, because now...
Actually, if I can have just a quick question on this. I'm wondering if that seed of grandeur, would that be the supramental light that she planted, or is that a stretch?
I think that would be a stretch. The seed of grandeur is the creation, is the gift of the creation that has come into the earth, because it's ablaze upon creation's quivering edge, the quivering edge of creation. We will go in the future much more into the concept of the supramental, but I don't believe it's here yet.
Okay.
We have a long way to go.
Okay, I just, because it said creation there, I connected that with the supramental.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Narad.
Must be somewhere also a picture and something related to it.
Page 16, I have a note down here. I think my book is still over there.
I worked on them. I just made photos.
Well, it's, page 16 is what I noted in that book.
Okay, I'm looking into it. Oh, here it is. Yes, this is the picture and the mother's explanation, if you don't mind just showing it.
Really, this is Huta's painting.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
So there is something incredible reaching out into this globe of ours, yes, from the transcendent world. By the way, the dawn in the Veda is seen as the Divine Mother. She is reaching out to the fire, the aspiration, the call from our nature.
Yeah.
The flame is calling to her and comes to her as the beggar for delight. He begs her for the delight. So can you imagine the aspiration from the heart, the flame from the heart looks like a beggar to her coming. So this is an overwhelming appearance of the truth. And Sri Aurobindo speaks that it is not on some mental level or vital level, it's on the physical level. It is kind of illumining the whole physical being in the moment. This is the dawn. And she makes a transformation of our physical life. So there is something about that seed of grandeur in the hours, that they will remember it and will call to it again and again, want to have illumination finally come down.
And we look at these words: a glamour, iridescent, a message, the immortal light that is ablaze. All of this in a few lines. When and dawn comes, an instant visitor, the Godhead shone. On life's thin border a while, the vision stood, and bent over earth's pondering forehead curve. The word pondering here is deeply thoughtful. But the visitor comes only for an instant. And life's thin border, this is so extraordinary. Interpreting a recondite beauty and bliss in colors, hieroglyphs of mystic sense. It wrote the lines of a significant myth, telling of a greatness of spiritual dawns, a brilliant code penned with the sky for page. We know that recondite means concealed, hidden, even incomprehensible to one of ordinary understanding. And of course, the hieroglyphs are these recognizable pictures of things presented. Interpreting a recondite beauty and bliss in colors, hieroglyphs of mystic sense. It wrote the lines of a significant myth, telling of a greatness of spiritual dawns, a brilliant code penned with the sky for page. So only in the next line do we find that an epiphany was disclosed. Right now, we're just seeing that this visitor, who is a Godhead, stood on life's thin border a while. It's a vision, of course. And it bent over the pondering forehead curve of earth. And as it bends over, it interprets a recondite beauty and bliss in the colors of a hieroglyph of mystic sense, and therefore writes the lines of a significant myth, telling us of a greatness of spiritual dawns. It's a brilliant code, penned with the sky for page. Why did the vision stand only a while? We will find that much further down in the passage. And Sri Aurobindo expands on this again and again and again. He tells us this story of the divine goddess, knowing that there's a place ready for her feet. And Sri Aurobindo and Mother only came because they saw that there was a readiness in the earth. Only in moments when there's the possibility of a leap in evolution will the avatars come. And here we see that they have come. She has come now. Sri Aurobindo is speaking specifically of the divine creatrix. Vladimir?
Well, what comes to my mind is that Sri Aurobindo uses the imagery of nature, the same as the Veda does, you know. It's not only a poetic kind of device, but it also, he uses it, he speaks about the sky, and you could see, and as the band with the sky for a page, a brilliant code of the hues of the dawn. So they are saying something, they're telling us something. So the imagery of the nature and the imagery of the inner experience are overlapping. And that is quite an interesting Vedic approach, to view the whole nature as the spiritual enterprise and not as something which is physical. And there we have to find our spiritual something where away from nature. It is a part of the same process, the creation of the nature and the creation of our psychological experiences are coming from the same source and can be one and the same event. And in that sense, we can review and change our view on nature altogether as a spiritual enterprise.
Yes.
Flowers, dawn, wind, rain, earth, sun. If you look at these magnificent creations, we would see that behind them there are the same powers which generate in us these states of being.
And about flowers, you know, Sri Aurobindo was asked about the flower that was named for him, Portulaca. And we call it Sri Aurobindo's compassion. And so they asked him, how come this flower fades so quickly if it's your compassion? And he said, my compassion does not fade with its representative. And then he makes one of the most beautiful statements on flowers I have ever read. Flowers are the moment's representation of things that are in themselves eternal. So
beautiful.
Even the briefest flower carries in itself the eternal.
So this provocative question actually created this fundamental statement. Yeah?
Yes, it did, exactly. Almost that day, the epiphany was disclosed, of which our thoughts and hopes are signal flares. A lonely splendor from the invisible goal almost was flung on the opaque inane. I think we'll stop there for a moment. These are very important lines. The Epiphany, of course, is the appearance or the manifestation of something, usually a deity, something divine. So that day the Epiphany was disclosed, of which our thoughts and hopes are signal flares. Well, obviously, when we pray and we hope, they are signal flares rising up to the divine, as when we light an agarbatti. But the Epiphany is very important here because it's a manifestation of this descent. And he says, almost was flung on the opaque inane. Now, the inane in Sri Aurobindo's teaching is the void of infinite space. And he uses it very often. It's not a negative void, because nothing is truly negative. If God made the world, then everything is God in one form or another, of which our thoughts and hopes, so our thoughts and our hopes are signal flares. A signal flare is something that's lit to go up immediately and to inform someone where one is, what is happening. So these are signal flares. And this lonely splendor from the invisible goal. The invisible goal is still invisible to us. We sometimes have some intimations or a brief realization, but it will be a while until we can see the goal and enter the supramental. But it was almost flung on the opaque inane. Opaque, of course, something opaque, there's no light in it. And it was flung on it. This is, remember, we're just on page 4, and we've been through all the lines about the night and the darkness. So it was almost flung on the opaque inane. And what happened next? Someone would like to read? Once more.
I'll go ahead and read.
Okay.
Once more a tread perturbed the vacant vast. Infinity's center, a face of rapturous calm, parted the eternal lids that open heaven, a form from far beatitudes seen too near.
The tread. The tread is the footsteps. Once more a tread perturbed the vacant vasts. Because when we worship the feet of the divine, we know that wherever she has stepped, the earth has been blessed and kissed by the divine. In a poem I once wrote of Mother in the Tuileries in France, the line went, "And the tender recollection of the grass, where her feet would walk on the lawn." Infinity's center, the face of infinity we have seen drawn by Huta, but Mother made the sketches. Huta only painted the painting. The sketch was made by Mother first of every one of those paintings by Huta. That face of rapturous calm parted the eternal lids that open heaven. Sri Aurobindo uses here the word lids, but we also have him using the word the doors, gates, everything telling us that heaven is mostly closed, but in moments when the inner lamps are lit, a line in Savitri, the gates open, the lids open, and the lids that open reveal a form from far beatitudes that seemed too near. And then we'll go on and read what that form is. Not too much more we can say about this. It's a lonely splendor. It's an invisible goal. And it was almost flung on the opaque inane. He doesn't say it was. He said it was almost flung on the opaque inane, the void of infinite space. Once more, a tread, perturbed. If we're perturbed, we know what we feel. It perturbed these vacant vasts. And this center of infinity, this face of rapturous calm, parted the eternal lids that open heaven. And then a form from far beatitudes seemed too near. And who is that form? An ambassadress twixt eternity and change. The omniscient goddess leaned across the breadths that wrap the fated journeyings of the stars and saw the spaces ready for her feet. I always have the vision of Mother at the top of the stairs. That beautiful photograph that was taken by Vishwajit. And we recently interviewed Vishwajit, who's now about 80, I believe, close to it. And he was the ashram photographer for many years. As we prepare to go from Mother's salon into Sri Aurobindo's room, there's that immense picture of the Mother, and he took that also. He took many, many pictures of her. So, an ambassadress. Well, we know what an ambassador is, but an ambassadress, the female delegate of the Purusha. Ambassadress, twixt. Twixt is now considered an old word. They will say many things in the dictionaries. Elite, not used any longer. But it's perfect here. It's perfect because it's between eternity and change. And why is it between eternity and change? Well, without change, there's only eternity. nothing else. And therefore, she's the ambassadress between eternity and that change. She's also the omniscient goddess. So he gives her two words, ambassadress and omniscient goddess. She leans across the breadths, these great vastnesses that wrap the fated journeyings of the stars, and saw the spaces ready for her feet. Today with Prema, we were reading a little further on in The Secret Knowledge, and we came across some of this feeling here, that the stars are all united by the divine Purusha and Prakriti. They're all united, but they are moving, obviously, they're moving. And they're fated journeyings. Mother does tell us that if you see a falling star and you make a prayer at that moment, it will come true. And that is, even in our human way, understandable.
Vladimir, I'm wondering if there's a picture here of these couple.
I'm sure Huta has probably done a picture, yes.
Right. We have a picture.
Could you find that? That would be nice.
This is the appearance of the Divine Mother. This is what the picture is. She comes.
You can barely see a face there.
Yeah.
Just the impression of a face. And that's because we cannot truly see the Mother at this point of our evolution. She said, if I came as I really was, it would shatter you. And when Huta one day asked her, are you really the Divine Mother? Mother said, come tomorrow. And Huta came, and she told me personally, but she could hardly speak. She was absolutely so enthralled, so blown away by this. Mother showed her from the waist up the Divine Mother. And she said, Narad, I'll never get over it. What a gift that was. So here's the Mother. You can see below the opaque inane below her feet. It's good that we can have some of these photos, Vladimir. Very good.
Mm.
Yes, go ahead.
This is what you mentioned there. This is the knot that ties together the stars. Yes?
Yeah.
The two who are one.
Are the right and the might.
In things.
Yes.
This Purusha and Prakriti, twixt eternity and change.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo says that the Mother is the only power who could really bridge the transcendental world to our nature. So she is that bridge, the golden bridge.
And she has to come veiled.
Yes. And he saw, you remember in one of this canto, he saw the outline of her face. And then he lost his consciousness and he fell at her feet,
Yes.
unconscious, prone.
It's the book of the Divine Mother at the very end, when he is going to appeal to her to bring something down who could change the earth. And of course, that becomes Savitri. We know that in the Mahabharata, Aswapati did not have a child. And he did a very, very intense ascesis for 18 years until the divine granted him a child, and that was Savitri. Just a few words about the epic itself. I don't think I've mentioned these to you before, but Sri Aurobindo followed the general design of the great epics and does not begin the story at the beginning. Here he only begins the story many, many books later, telling us about Savitri growing up as a child. So this is a kind of flashback that we are seeing, where he's introducing us. He does mention Savitri, and he will mention her in this first book, The Symbol Dawn, and he will mention her again and again, but not as a child, not evolving into the Divine Mother. In fact, she doesn't really even begin that until Satyavan dies in her lap. And she really feels to go with him, to commit sati, as so many women did in those days, or to become a nun and disappear from the world in a convent. But then the divine speaks to her, and he says, "Is this what I have to go and tell the Lord, that the work you came for is left undone?" So here is the first graphic words and lines in the mantra that tell us of the passage of the Divine Mother, omniscient goddess, who leans across these breaths that wrap the fated journeyings of the star, and she sees the spaces ready for her feet. I want to read just a little more because it's so poignant when he says, "Once she half looked behind for her veiled son." Her veiled son is everything. And she has to come to earth to make the earth the home of the divine. Once she half looked behind for her veiled son, then, thoughtful, went to her immortal work. Earth felt the imperishable's passage close. The waking ear of nature heard her steps, and wideness turned to her its limitless eye, and scattered on sealed depths, her luminous smile kindled to fire the silence of the worlds. So, because she is thinking of us, she went to her immortal work. And now we see here earth and nature in the next two lines. Earth felt the imperishable's passage close. We should all pay attention to the capitals. Sri Aurobindo capitalizes imperishable, and the waking ear of nature, capital N, heard her steps. So what Vladimir was saying about nature is very, very important here. Nature is the creator of this life. And she would eventually bring forward the Superman. And to her, it wouldn't matter if it took millions and millions of years. And only when Mother made an agreement with nature to accelerate her steps, her progress, and she would become much more beautiful, much more rapidly. She would become greater in every aspect that nature finally agreed. And so the waking ear of nature heard her steps, and wideness turned to her its limitless eye. And then scattered on sealed depths, her luminous smile kindled to fire the silence of the worlds. Anyone like to comment, share something?
Maybe I can see the pictures.
Yes.
And one more line. All grew a consecration and a
That's the
rhyme.
line we should end with today.
So if you look into the picture, that flame of the silence of the worlds, this is she kindling this flame of aspiration in nature.
You can see it's the Divine Mother.
Yeah.
Again, it's only the slightest hint of a face, and her arms kindling this fire. Very good idea, both of you, to have some of the paintings of Huta. You know, I worked with her for many years, and I've just put together a whole series of 136 pages of my experiences with Huta. Her letters to me and mine to her, her experiences in painting Savitri. And I will share those soon on our website and on my blogs eventually also. She was a very unique soul. But I have to tell you a humorous story, that when I was staying with Temi all those years, when she wanted me to be with her as she prepared to leave her body, we were talking about Huta and not so congenially, perhaps. And I said, but Mother said Huta had a beautiful soul. And Temi smiled at me and looked at me and said, we all have beautiful souls. And that is very true. Each of us have a beautiful soul. And, well, maybe I could just end with something. Can you close that out for me or reduce the size? There we are. Just a few words from Mother. We have all met in previous lives, said the Mother. Otherwise, we would not have come together in this life. We are of one family and have worked through the ages for the victory of the divine and its manifestation upon earth. If I should forget every week to begin with a brief meditation, please someone remind me. We should put ourselves in our highest consciousness when we begin to read Savitri. And I'm looking at the lines and I'm so into the lines, but we are a group. We are a special group that is blessed by the divine to come together. And so we should meditate very briefly, just a minute or so, as one. Namaste.